More than half of American adults read below a sixth grade level, and the average American reads at a seventh to eighth grade level. What this means is that the person you are fighting with in the comments more than likely reads at a 12 to 14-year-old's level. This does not mean that they are stupid, but we do have a literacy crisis.
This 17-year-old Chinese girl did so well at a math competition that she beat students from MIT, Princeton, Oxford, as well as AI models and her very own teacher. But not everyone is celebrating her.
Can you study 16 hours a day with barely 5 hours sleep? This is the reality for millions of Chinese high school students.
Here's what you need to understand, that America is in a literacy crisis, and the only people who can change it are parents. And that doesn't have to do with parents sitting there and doing homework with their kids. It has to do with how they change policies. So what was happening before is that if you were not hitting fourth grade reading levels, you were not moved into fifth grade. That's my bell for lunch, so I gotta be very fast. Now, we can't hold kids back. Parents got upset about it enough where now holding kids back is not allowed. They can get straight Fs, they're going on to the next grade. And that's causing a worse and worse literacy crisis, because you can't read at a fourth grade level and you're going to be in seventh grade and eighth grade. And maybe you catch up to seventh grade, but you're graduating high school and you cannot read.
One of the biggest things that I've learned since working in healthcare, and this is not to be rude to anyone, it's that America has a huge problem with a large population of people being illiterate. And I don't just mean like don't know how to read and write, because that is whatever, you know, like you don't know how to read your paperwork, I'll read it to you, no problem. But the amount of people who don't have listening comprehension skills are insane.
Imagine this, you're standing in the middle of Times Square. Screens are flashing everywhere. Advertisements, headlines, tweets, TikToks, and yet, millions of the people walking past you can't even read beyond a fifth grade level. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't want to learn, but because somewhere along the line, the system failed them. I remember reading a report years ago, buried deep in government statistics, that said 1 in 5 American adults struggles with basic reading. That number shocked me. I thought it had to be exaggerated. But the more I dug in, the more I realized it wasn't. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, China is building an education system designed to turn ordinary kids into world-class innovators, engineers, and scientists. So today, we're going to unravel this puzzle. Why can't so many Americans read, while China treats education like a national treasure? And what this means for the future of both nations.
Is anyone else struggling to reconcile with the fact that there's a significant portion of Americans who are just insane?
In 2022 and 2023, the National Literacy Institute reported that 54% of U.S. adults have a literacy below 6th grade, meaning that they have a tough time reading and spelling words like flammable, institution, sympathetic, psychology, and also that 47 million Americans, or about 1 in 7, have a reading level below 5th grade and are functionally illiterate, and that 21% of them are illiterate. That's your reasoning, not that they're insane.
Why do many Chinese students want to study in US if China is so strong? I always saw this kind of comments anytime related to trade war or student visa. Let's talk about it. Learning from the best is not a weakness. For decades, the US really was a top student in science and tech. After World War II, it attracted global talent like Einstein and even Chen Xuesen himself, one of the founding fathers of China's space program. Even now, many of the engineers driving AI in Silicon Valley are Chinese. Studying in US does not mean worshiping it. It means learning from what works. China tried closing off once. It didn't end well. In the late Qing dynasty, China shut itself off from the world. The result, Opium War, colonization, and over a century of humiliation. We have learned that lesson. Closing the door means falling behind. You grow by engaging with the world, not isolating from it. The US needs global talent to stay on top, and China also needs global exchange to grow stronger. Students studying abroad are part of the process. They're not running away, they are building bridges. The US today is messy. Political gridlock, social division, declining infrastructure, but it still hosts many of the world's top universities and research hubs. That makes it a key place to learn. Let's be real, no country will hand you their core tech. If you want to master it, you have to study it. You have to understand the system before you can innovate or compete with it. A lot of Chinese students going abroad is not about loving the West. It's about growth, survive, and future leverage. If you find this is helpful, hit like and share and check out my Substack in the bio. It's free and I got more deeper contents there. Thank you.
Let's start with a brutal truth. Over 43 million adults in the United States have low literacy skills. That's roughly the population of California. Many of them struggle to read medicine labels, job applications, or even voting ballots. This didn't happen overnight. Over decades, school funding cuts, overcrowded classrooms, and a system obsessed with standardized testing over real learning left millions behind. Some kids graduate high school without ever reading a full book. I still remember visiting a public library in rural America once. It was nearly empty, its shelves dusty, the children's section outdated by decades. Compare that to the libraries in Beijing or Shanghai, packed with kids after school, attending free reading workshops. The contrast was painful. In America, literacy became a privilege. In China, it's seen as a responsibility, a duty to oneself, family, and country. That difference changes everything.
Here's what you need to understand, that America isn't a literacy crisis, and the only people who can change it are parents. And that doesn't have to do with parents sitting there and doing homework with their kids. It has to do with how they change policies. So what was happening before is that if you were not hitting 4th grade reading levels, you were not moved into 5th grade. That's my bell for lunch, so I gotta be very fast. Now, we can't hold kids back. Parents got upset about it enough where now holding kids back is not allowed. They can get straight Fs, they're going on to the next grade. And that's causing a worse and worse literacy crisis, because you can't read at a 4th grade level and you're going to be in 7th grade and 8th grade. And maybe you catch up to 7th grade, but you're graduating high school and you cannot read. But we're not allowed to do anything about it. We have to keep letting them go. And where educators are doing the best that they can, unfortunately, some kids should actually just repeat a year. And sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. But now we are getting full groups of adults who cannot read. And the only way that's going to change is parents support something to pull these kids back and get them the help they need.
Hey guys, yesterday we were chatting about the differences between China and American education system. And today there's a news that Trump announced he wants to dismantle the US Department of Education. I'm not really sure what the US DOE does, but it got me to think about what education means. And that made me want to share an amazing story with you all. Gui Haichao. He is China's first astronaut who didn't start out as a professional pilot. In May 2023, he blasted off to the space station and became a hero to the public, especially for children. But here's the thing. His journey started in a small poor village near the border of China and Burma. Back to 1986, Gui was born in a mountain village in Yunnan. You know, the part of China is really rural. And because there is not much in the way of transportation or industry, it's tough to make a good living. Gui spent his first 15 years there. There were no fancy schools or rich people around, just him and his books. But he was really smart, and when he got to the high school, his grade was so good and he got into the best school in the county. To be noticed here is the best of the county, not the city, let alone the provincial capital city, but just the county school. Then in 2005 came the big moment, the National College Entrance Exam, and guess what? He scored the highest in the whole county. With those amazing grades, he got into Beijing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics, studying aerospace design and engineering. That was the start of something big. It was the first step in his incredible journey. 9 years later, he got his PhD and did some really cool postdoctoral research. In just 3 years, he published nearly 20 top-tier papers on SCI. That's a huge deal, and because of all his hard work, he was able to go back to his university as an associate professor. And he was only 31 years old at that moment, which is already amazing. But the story doesn't stop here. In 2020, China's space station started looking for researchers from universities and institutions. That was a chance for regular people, not just a God-gifted special trained astronaut, to go to space. Gui again took his chance. After a lot of tough tests and training, he made a cut and became an astronaut. Fast forward to May 2023. When the rocket took off, the whole village, well, he grew up, went crazy. The villagers crowded into his family's yard, waving little flags and cheering like crazy. His family was so proud, their eyes filled with happy tears. And at his old school, hundreds of students watched the launch on live. Those kids are on the same path he once was. And I bet a lot more kids in that village will be inspired to dive into knowledge. What a story, from a little poor village to the galaxy. Gui's life shows us a real power of education. It's not just about getting good grade, it's about making your dreams come true and changing your life without a prosperous family background. That's the power of education. Take an ordinary kid from a small village.
China views education the way America once viewed the space race, a matter of national survival and global power. For centuries, education in China was the main path to success. The ancient imperial examination system meant a farmer's son could study hard, pass the tests, and rise to become a government official. That cultural respect for learning never disappeared. It simply evolved. Today, China invests over $500 billion a year in education. Rural schools are getting internet access, elite universities are attracting top global talent, and entire cities are being designed around innovation hubs. When I visited Shenzhen years ago, I saw billboards promoting science fairs instead of fast food. Kids were building drones in after-school clubs. It hit me. This is what happens when a nation decides education is its future.
Asians are smart not because of genes, but because of peer pressure. Obviously, some people are just born smart and they can do everything easily without even trying, but the majority of the people are still smart because they worked so hard for it. And why is it that they work hard? Because of peer pressure. For so many countries in Asia, kid comparison is such a big deal. Like, you will compare your kids to every other kid in your school, like in your district, every single person that you know. So when they're doing extracurriculars or getting extra classes and lessons in on a Saturday, then you're going to put your kid in that class too. And that's how Asians are smart, because they are in so many different classes and they're always working. Like, a lot of the people that I know who live in an Asian country don't just have school Monday through Friday. They go and take extra classes on a Saturday so they can get ahead. And because everyone is doing this, you're not really getting ahead of others, you're just getting on the same level. So if you're not taking extra lessons and classes on a Saturday or after school, then you're actually behind. And I honestly think this kind of like education system is kind of toxic, but it's also what makes people so smart is because of this comparison. And not even in Asian countries, like even in America, if you see like an Asian community, you know that they are competitive, and that's how they're smart, because they get different opportunities from different people and they put them on their own kids. And like, I see so many Asian canon events where it's like, oh, they play piano and violin as a kid. I did too, and it's because my parents put me in it. But why is it a canon event? It's because all the parents see other people doing it, and then so they put their kids into it too, and then so all the kids have the same experience. It's like actually pretty crazy, but this is definitely the real reason.
Our children cannot read. Our children cannot read.
And you know what happens to children that don't read? They turn into adults who can't read. So I see this from the other end. Go ahead and watch that video. I'm going to tag her in the comments because she gives a great summary of what you can do when your child is in K-12. But I'm going to tell you a little bit what happens once they graduate. So I've worked in higher education for 12 years. I've spent 6 of those years working in community colleges. And when you work in community colleges, we always have something called developmental/remedial courses. And our most popular remedial developmental course is going to be reading. Now, we teach remedial reading all the way down to the 5th grade level. So there is a initial reading class, let's call it reading 1, where you are teaching people who are at a 5th to 7th grade reading level. The scary thing about this class is that it's actually representative of the average reading level of adults across America. It is between 5th and 8th grade. So when we are having conversations about our children who can't read, we also have to talk about and highlight how it's not necessarily that the parents are not teaching their kids how to read, is that a lot of our parents do not know how to read themselves, or not know how to read at a level where they can actually teach someone else how to read. Now, we can look back and blame No Child Left Behind or how we were passed on. I'm a millennial myself, so I know that happened with a lot of my peers. But what happens when you have a child who cannot read at a college level? They end up going into college, and college is a little different because you got to pay for that. Now, when you send them there, if they are not able to get into a school where they are required to be at college level, then more than likely, if they have reading challenges, they'll be placed in reading classes that they have to pay for. These are classes that do not go towards your degree. So a lot of our students, when you start at a 5th grade reading level, your chance of graduating from college drops to 20%. When you add on the other identities of these students, so first generation students, students of color, students from low socioeconomic neighborhoods, these students are going to have even less of a chance. So if we're working down from 20, that's almost none. So what happens is you have a group of people who have tried to do something better with their lives because they have been passed on. They think they can do it. They think it'll be okay. And then they get to college, and then we take the money for these developmental courses because we have to, because they won't survive in these classes without this reading comprehension. But there is really no regulation, because can we remediate 6 years of schooling in one semester? Probably not. So people get discouraged, they drop out, and the cycle continues. And no one lets people know that it is okay to continue to learn. So this is my encouragement for everybody, to learn, to continue to learn. Because people will often tell me, well, I really want to go back to school, or I really want to do this thing, but it's going to take too much time. It's going to take too much time. Baby, the time going to pass anyway. What you going to do with it? What you going to do with it? Okay, the time is going to pass anyway. So while you're sitting here complaining about how much time it's going to take, you're letting the time pass you by. Too many of us die at 25, but we live until we 80. And the reason why we die is because we stop learning. We stop being beginners. We start being afraid to learn. Just because you're 18 don't mean that you know shit. Just because you're 25 don't mean you know nothing. Hell, just because you're 80, you might have a lot of stuff to learn and a lot of places to go. But we are always just so prideful. And that's society's doing. It's also our own personal pressures. There's a lot of things going on. But choose to learn. Choose to let your child see you learning, starting over. My most encouraging student stories are when we have a student and a parent and they doing it together. Why? Because when your child sees you trying, they believe they can try too. They believe that their clock ain't ticking down as fast as society makes them think it is. So she's pleading for us to focus on the children. I want us to focus on them children, but also focus on ourselves, the adults. You can do it. Let this encourage you. This time gonna pass anyway. But we can no longer let them bank on the fact that we can't read as a society, because they are pulling the wool over our eyes in every direction, and we can't see it unless we can know enough to be dangerous enough to ask the questions that matter.
But it's not just about reading words. It's about reading the world. In America, critical thinking education has collapsed. Schools teach kids to memorize answers for tests, not to question information or analyze it. Combine that with social media algorithms feeding people emotionally charged content, and you get a nation where conspiracy theories spread faster than science. I once talked to a college freshman who admitted he had never read a book cover to cover, ever. His entire information diet came from memes and short videos. He wasn't stupid. He was a product of a system that never taught him how to think deeply. Meanwhile, in China, entire high school curricula revolve around problem-solving, logic, and STEM competitions. It's not perfect. Students face intense pressure, but the goal is clear: train minds to build, invent, and innovate.
One of the biggest things that I've learned since working in healthcare, and this is not to be rude to anyone, it's that America has a huge problem with a large population of people being illiterate. And I don't just mean like don't know how to read and write, because that is whatever, like you don't know how to read your paperwork, I'll read it to you, no problem. But the amount of people who don't have listening comprehension skills are insane. The amount of times you have a sound mind patient, someone who is totally with it cognitively, and you have to explain again and again why they cannot do something, like, oh, you can't eat because of this, and you explain and explain and explain, and they still don't get it. I don't know what it is, but family members, patients, loved ones, you tell them no, it's like telling a 5-year-old no, they do it anyway. And you repeat yourself so much in healthcare, you just have to get used to saying the same thing over and over and over again like a robot.
Why are Asians so smart? So many people have just assumed that I'm smart because I'm Asian, and so many people have been wrong. It's because growing up, standards for school is that you get straight A's, A+. to be correct. And I remember coming home with one B out of my many A's and just feeling so disappointed and sad and anxious. And my parents were always really loving and gracious. They didn't give me that much pressure, but I still had a lot of pressure put onto myself. And there's a lot of implied pressure with the culture in general, with just being an A+ straight A student. And we all grew up with many different study groups. You know how when you're trying to pass this big exam at the end of your degree, whether it's, you know, for becoming a police or becoming a nurse, you always take those big study exams to try and make sure that you pass those exams. Well, as an Asian growing up, that was just like, we went through books and books and books with every grade. So that was just part of growing up, completing those darn study books. And being smart and doing well in school, there's a lot of honor and family reputation tied to it. Just like with the implied expectations, when you're surrounded by really smart people that have, you know, sacrificed so much to be where they are at, and when you are around all these people that are really smart and intelligent, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when if you want to fit in. And Chinese people expect stable careers. You basically have 3 job options. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. That's what you have to choose from growing up, basically. It's just that economic security trumps everything, trumps any heart's desire for anything. You can do all that as a hobby. Like, that's not going to be your career. And we just really strive to impress our parents, because they're just continuously unimpressed. No matter how good you do in school, no matter, you know, what kind of awards you get, they just, they're not impressed, which makes you want to work harder, that's for sure. And yeah, just in general, that cultural expectation of having higher intelligence. Even other cultures expect you to have a higher intelligence. So you really, try and live up to that for sure. And let's not forget, you know, China had a crazy single child policy, which resulted in all these high achieving couples with one single child, where they could fixate on all of their hopes and dreams and aspirations onto this one child. You know, a lot of these people devote their entire life to make sure that their child is happy and has all the opportunities in the world. They will give their child anything else as long as you have good grades. And why are we so smart? We have nerdy hobbies. What's my hobby? I love learning about finance and investing. And many Asians have a deep love of gaming and anime and just general technology, which is financially a really good choice.
Here's the paradox. Americans have more access to information than any generation in history, yet read less than ever before. The average American spends over 7 hours a day on screens, but most of it is passive consumption, not active learning. Reading long texts online feels almost painful because our brains have been rewired for speed, not depth. Neuroscientists call this the decline of deep reading, the ability to process complex ideas and connect them across disciplines. Without it, societies lose innovators, thinkers, and problem solvers. China saw this danger early. That's why they limit social media use for students, promote physical books, and even turn math competitions into televised national events. Education isn't competing with TikTok. It's designed to outshine it.
More than half of American adults read below a 6th grade level, and the average American reads at a 7th to 8th grade level. What this means is that the person you are fighting with in the comments more than likely reads at a 12 to 14-year-old's level. This does not mean that they are stupid, but we do have a literacy crisis. I've been posting the last 2 days about class and privilege and wealth and how that affects a person's ability to produce creative works. And I've had some comments that say basically, working class people know how to write. Working class people can make books. I have 2 jobs and I can still write. Me too. That's not what I'm saying. Most of the time when people are arguing with you in your comments, not always, but a lot of the time, they cannot and have not comprehended the message of what you're saying. I used to teach English, and so a lot of our US curriculum is asking people to take a message and break it apart for its arguments. This is a very difficult skill, and not everyone is up to the task. And there are a lot of reasons for that aren't personal failings. They're systemic failings. This is just to say, before you get mad about a book review or even a comment in your posts, just because you feel misunderstood, you will be misunderstood. Let it go.
Can you study 16 hours a day with barely 5 hours of sleep? This is a reality for millions of Chinese high school students. Is that because they really like to study so much? No, that's not true. Because they don't have a choice. They have to prepare the most important exam, college entrance exam, which will define their future. In China, there's also several very famous Gaokao factories. In these high schools, they will have military management and a very rigorous schedule. In these schools, the only goal is to get higher scores and to study hard.
Here's the hard truth. Literacy isn't just about reading. It's about power, progress, and possibility. If America continues on this path, underfunded schools, distracted students, uncritical thinking, it risks creating a population easy to manipulate but ill-prepared to solve 21st century problems. China, for all its flaws, understands that the future belongs to the educated. That's why they treat teachers like national assets, students like future innovators, and education like the foundation of civilization itself. The question is, will America wake up before it's too late? Because literacy isn't just about words on a page, it's about shaping the world we all have to live in.
I don't know if you guys know this, but this illiteracy pandemic that's happening in our world is genuinely insane. Specifically in the US, people have the resources to learn how to read, learn how to write, and some people, they do learn how to read and write, and then as an adulthood, they don't read. And they rely on ChatGPT to submit their college essays. And then you have students that, because we transitioned our educational system from phonics to sight words, they just don't know how to read. And I'm just like, bro, pick up a book, please. So much of the world is illiterate. Around 14% of the world is illiterate because they lack the resources of learning how to read. And because you have the resources, why aren't you reading? And this whole book talk, whatever, I'm so happy that people are reading, but also this is not the best literature to be consuming. There's so many books out there, and if you feel like you don't have time to read, at least subscribe to a Substack, y'all. Because literature education is so important. I know we put more effort into learning science, learning math, because they're the quote-unquote high-paying jobs, engineering, whatever, but we need people who can effectively communicate, and I see this. I have friends that are hiring managers, and they're realizing that all the people that they're hiring just don't know how to communicate well, and they introduce English majors can also apply to these engineering jobs because they don't know how to speak, bro. I don't know, that's my rant for today.
This 17-year-old Chinese girl did so well at a math competition that she beat students from MIT, Princeton, Oxford, as well as AI models and her very own teacher. But not everyone is celebrating her. Anyone can join this competition. Well, anyone who can understand this sort of stuff, whatever that is, and 802 contestants made it to the final. Just look at the top 10. Peking University, one of the top universities in China, Cambridge, Tsinghua, another top university in China, and MIT. And then in the 12th spot, you have Jiangping from Jiangsu Lianshui Secondary Vocational School, which I'm pretty sure you haven't heard of. No one has. And that's exactly why this girl is a true underdog. Vocational schools normally have a stigma attached to them because they're seen as academically inferior. But math is her passion, and for the past 2 years, she's been studying by herself advanced mathematics and decided this year to try her luck at the competition. This should have been a wholesome story, but many people, including other finalists, are not convinced that she's a math genius, and they've asked for her exam answers to be made public and for an investigation. Now, the final round of this competition took place just this weekend on Saturday, and unlike the qualifying round, it's a closed book exam, so hopefully Pink proves her critics wrong. I'm rooting for her.
The choice is simple but urgent. A nation that can't read, can't lead. America has the resources to change this story, to fund schools, teach critical thinking, fight misinformation, and rebuild a culture that values learning. But it starts with us. Pick up a book. Question what you read online. Support education reforms. Because the future belongs to those who can not only read the world, but rewrite it.